Welcome back, Legend. Today I want to talk to you guys about how often you need to train to optimize your results. Firstly, it's obviously going to depend on what you're trying to achieve. So depending on the goal will depend on how often you may need to train. There's also a couple other things that I'll talk about in a second that will determine how often you need to train to get the best results. It might be slightly surprising than what you're actually thinking right now. So the first thing I like to think about is less is more and more is less. We're looking for efficiency, the minimum dose for maximum effect. I think this is one of the biggest kind of training fallacies in our industry, is that everyone just thinks it's smash and grab, always needs to be high intense, need to do as much training as possible, when in reality you can really only train as hard as you can recover. So you can actually be hindering your performance by doing too much training. There is definitely too much training. And you need to fit it into everything. This includes your lifestyle. Everything needs to be factored in. So it's about, for us anyway, it's about getting the minimal dose. So what is the least amount of work that we can do to get the maximum results? And sometimes, yes, there is a bit of training involved depending on what the goals and the results you want is. But a lot of the time we can actually do far less training for just as good of results. So some of the things that you need to consider is your goals, like I said, your lifestyle, your stress levels, your priorities. What are you currently prioritizing in your life? Do you have kids? Do you have work? Do you have uni? All these other things. Sports. So what sport you play, when you play it, how long it goes for, what are the demands of the sports, etc., etc. And the training phase. Is it in season? Is it pre-season? Is it off season? All of these are going to have an impact on how often you should do your strength and conditioning program. So we're going to delve into kind of 4 areas: fat loss, strength, muscle gain, and power. And I'm going to give you an idea of how often you should train for each one. Fat loss, 2 to 5 times a week. Now this is the thing. Everyone thinks they need to go smash and grab 7 times a week, high intensity, all this, all that. The truth is, the first thing you need to work on is your eating habits. So you need to nail down your eating habits first, because at the end of the day, all we're trying to do for fat loss is create a slight calorie deficit. And this deficit is going to help us burn extra caloric energy, which is generally via body fat. Body fat is really just stored energy. And if you're utilizing that energy and it doesn't need to be there as a stored resource, then your body will liberate it. So my suggestion is to start off with 2, especially if you've been doing 0. If you've been doing 0 exercise, always start with something very low and manageable. Something is always better than nothing. So start with 2, and these might be your more intense sessions, and it can be a mix of strength and conditioning. And then over time, we can slowly start to build this up. 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week. So don't just jump straight into the deep end of the pool. A lot of the time, what we've seen is that if you go from 0 to 5, yeah, you might crush the first week, but then it slowly starts to dissipate, and then all of a sudden, we're back down to 0 again. Whereas if we start with 2, we can always add more. We just need to consider a balance between strength, conditioning, and recovery. So some of these sessions can be strength-based, some of the sessions can be conditioning-based, and some of the sessions can be low-intensity-based. But if we start at 2 and build our way up to 5, we're going to see some great results, and it'll kind of progress with our learning about eating and our eating habits as well. We just got to be patient. Okay, so for strength, 1 to 4 times a week is going to be our dose. Now this will depend more on what phase of training that you're in. And obviously what sport you play, how important strength training actually is to that sport. So generally with the off season, you can train 3 to 4 times a week. There's not a lot of other sports training in. Strength training doesn't necessarily always have to make you sore, but there can be some neural fatigue there. So by lifting heavier weights, you can definitely create some fatigue. So your brain doesn't really want to fire as quickly as it normally would. this is with lots of strength training. It can accumulate over time, but during the off season, it doesn't matter so much. It's actually going to be of benefit to us getting stronger. During the pre-season, we may pull back to 2 to 3 times a week because obviously sports training is going to pick up a little bit. And then in season, we really only need it once or twice a week. And this is to get a stimulus to keep that strength that you might have built in the off and pre-season, but not to completely cook you, so you won't get fatigued. If you're only doing 1 to 2 sessions a week, it's enough for maintenance, maybe a little bit of positive change. But the biggest thing is that it won't fatigue you. You won't get sore. You won't be tired from your sessions. You're just getting enough of a dose in. Muscle gain, we're looking at probably 3 to 5 times a week. Frequency is probably the key element here. So we need enough stimulus to create muscle growth, but too much stimulus can also be of hindrance as well. It's one of those things where you got to be careful that we get some of our information from the muscle magazines, and we're talking about guys who are on likely anabolic steroids. They can train lots because they are recovering really well, which is fine. And unless you're on anabolic steroids, you probably don't need to train that often. It obviously depends as well. If you're doing it for sport, again, that type of training is mainly for aesthetics. So we've got to be careful how you're gaining weight, basically, and how you're gaining that muscle, where that muscle is being gained. 3 is generally what I found to be absolute perfect dose because you can split them over full body workouts. It means you can hit pretty much every major muscle group 3 times a week. That's plenty of stimulus. That's plenty of frequency. Not too much muscle soreness, but enough to create some muscle change, a little bit of growth, a little bit of extra muscle fiber. That's what we're looking for. The next one is conditioning and fitness. Again, this probably depends on the phase of training, but 3 to 5 times a week. Maybe in the off season it's probably closer to 2, maybe 3 times a week. It's of a lower intensity and you're more trying to just accumulate a little bit of volume. Pre-season is where it picks up a little bit. You might do it 3 times a week, maybe on the back end of your actual sports training, which is also an element of conditioning, by the way. If you are moving and you are competing in your sport, you're definitely going to be getting fitter. Ideally, we like to mix and match it a little bit with like a high and a low. So some might be short, high intensity sessions. Some might be lower intensity, longer sessions. The key is to not cook yourself with that stuff. The last one is power and speed. Now, really, we probably only need to do this 1 to 2 times a week. Just because power and speed is so intense. Like, we're looking for this like high intensity, fast muscle contraction, and at the time it shouldn't feel fatiguing because we're just looking for high quality reps. But again, because of the speed, it can be very fatiguing to the brain. Therefore, the brain then fatigues the rest of the body. There's probably not going to be too much muscle soreness because of the types of the contractions, but realistically, you need to allow to recover from these sessions. So doing really only 1 to 2 times a week is more than enough. This can obviously change depending on the phase of training, but realistically, we only just need enough just to get that fast speed power working. All right, guys, hopefully that's helped and clarified a little bit for you. Thanks.